أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe, the master of the day of judgment. I bear witness and testimony to the oneness of Allah, to His magnificence, His omnipotence, His might, His glory, to His being the creator and sustainer of all things, the giver of life, the guider of hearts, the master of the day of judgment. And I bear witness to the fact that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His servant and final messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and upon all those who choose to tread in his path until the last day. As we find ourselves in the midst of the blessed month of Rabiul Awwal, people throughout this city, the country in its entirety, and really all over the world gathered together to celebrate the Prophet ﷺ in our lives. May Allah make us always from the ummah of Muhammad. And whether or not you are somebody who follows an opinion on the celebration of the birth of the Prophet of God, the reality is that there are gatherings taking place where people are speaking of his life. They are speaking about his teachings. They are speaking about his biography in the hopes of drawing closer to him. And the fundamental understanding of the sending of the Prophet of God as a vehicle to enhance our sense of ethical conduct, to embody mercy, compassion, and all things that are good at the highest of levels that a human could potentially get to. The base of all of it is that the sending of the Prophet ﷺ was to teach us to do what it is that Allah wants us to do, and to not do the things that Allah tells us to not do. And it's not an overt simplification, but rendered within all of the teachings of historical narratives and parables to give us lessons and meanings. Dua upon dua that are so beautiful from the Prophet himself, as well as what we see littering the pages of the Quran. Accounts that speak to us and verses that give us indications of what it means to be a good person without any ambiguity. The basis of it all is so that we know what we draw closer to the divine through. And it always comes back to God. This is what we find within any construct of God, a house of God, a book of God, a messenger of God. The idea of building a house of God is not to draw attentiveness to the house, but to draw attentiveness to God. So too with the book of God, the messenger of God. For many of us, when we are given religion that becomes overtly ritualized in a vacuum, not taught just foundational aspects of theology that can bring forth within us an empowering sense of faith. May Allah make us from the strongest of believers. Increase each of us in our iman. This becomes an important thing to not undermine. Sheikh Hamza, he tells us of scholars of the past who say that within certain things, Allah has hidden other things. That Allah has hidden three things in three things. That He has hidden His contentment in obedience. so do not look down at obedience. That he has hidden his anger in disobedience, so do not look down at disobedience. And he has hidden his closest of servants, his awliya, amongst creation, so don't look down at anybody in creation. These three principles, if we were to utilize them as an outline of strategy in how we approach our day to day, Allah's contentment is hidden within obedience, just as Allah's wrath is hidden in disobedience. The idea principally from here is that the actions that we engage in, fundamentally, we're not going to be able to know how Allah will accept or reject, how Allah will take in or punish. May Allah grant us entrance into His Jannah without any judgment. It can't come from a lack of trying. And what you are competing with each and every day, living in a city that is like this, are other systems and other ideologies and other individuals that want you to believe that your happiness is rooted in following what it is that they command you to and denying what it is that they prohibit you from. But that's not what our tradition teaches us. Contentment is found within obedience, meaning that you do what it is that Allah asks you to do, and within that is what it is that will bring pleasure to the divine. The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us in the hadith of a woman who is a prostitute, this is her job. She acquires her income through the committing of zina. And this woman, she comes upon a dog that is panting heavily out of thirst that will nearly bring him to death at this point as he stands near a well. And this woman who is identified as a prostitute in the hadith, seeing this animal in its excessive state of thirst, removes her sock, ties it to her veil, lowers it into the well, and brings water forth to quench its thirst. And from this one act, Allah gives her paradise. May Allah make us people of Jannah. Within obedience is Allah's contentment. So do not look down at obedience. When you see any opportunity to be able to engage and partake in a city that is filled with egocentricity, one that tells me to center myself and chase after my wants at the expense of my needs, let alone anybody else's needs. It's always okay that somebody else is doing what it is that they do, and I don't have to get done the things that I can get done. My children and I were walking through the subway the other day, and we came upon a homeless person that was asleep on the steps. We had with us some food, and we came back and gave to this person some food. And as we were doing this, a group of people walked by, and the woman looked at me and she said, "You're a good Christian." And I said, "I don't know if you've looked at me before." I said, "Don't worry, we love Jesus too." Why does she not associate the act of service to God's creation to Islam? Why is her immediate reaction going to be one that this type of thing can be informed of teachings from other traditions? There's a million of us that live in this city. If every single day, even an iota of that total number was out there interjecting just actions of kindness and not falling into any type of mess, this woman in this hadith, we don't want to undermine it, because you also don't know why it is that someone might choose the life that they choose. I've sat down with people in my office who tell me in a state of hunger and homelessness, starvation, the person who extended a hand with a sandwich was the one that brought them into trafficking and prostitution. The outward is not what we judge off of, and Allah is looking for reasons. Within the following of His commands, obedience is contentment. We have everybody move up Just fill in wherever there's carpet in front of you so we can fit in as many people as possible. It's the same thing every week. And then the latter part of the statement, so don't look down at it. If you struggle with something, you struggle. But if you mock somebody because they're just trying to stay on the deen, what are you really mocking at the end of the day? You look down at somebody because they seek to dress the way our tradition teaches us to dress. You look down and say that, why do you try so hard to eat in this way? Just eat whatever you want to eat. Within following the commands is Allah's contentment. Who cares what anybody else thinks? Do what Allah and Allah's messenger are asking you to do. And we are a tradition that's not just about the avoidance of wrong. To say, I didn't do anything bad, doesn't mean that you're still doing the good that you can do. In that one opportunity, Allah looks for moments. And the second part of it, that Allah's anger is rooted in disobedience. So don't look down at disobedience. And in this hadith of a similar nature, a woman is described who is entered into Jahannam. May Allah protect us from it. And the act that brings her to that reality is that this woman would have a cat or a kitten. The hadith mentions both. It was either an adult cat or a baby kitten that she would tie up and would not feed and prevent it from also going to eat just vermin that were there in the earth. She's literally torturing this beast, engaged in a cruelty as to what kind of heart would allow for you to do that. And the hadith says with specificity, this woman is going to Jahannam. May Allah protect us from it. Within disobedience is found Allah's anger. The idea is that we just don't know what it'll be. Which one of those deeds and decisions, the choices that I chose. But you can think with a mind that has awareness to it, that anything that you bring your life to, you are readying yourself for a space in ultimate judgment. This is not meant to be something that renders scrutiny, that creates paralysis, but is meant to inform the philosophy on life that you adopt when you choose the choices that you choose. And there are things that fundamentally we can understand in our religion that Allah and Allah's messenger tell us again and again that they are not going to be happy with and they will be angered by. And as gatherings come together where people celebrate the reality of the sending of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you're going to try to dress the way the Prophet dressed, and you're going to try to eat the way the Prophet ate, and you're going to try to do things in those ways that the Prophet did, you better get angry by the things that the Prophet got angry by. And when people struggled with the haram, they drank alcohol, they commit zina. A young man comes to the Prophet of God, you have to make zina halal for me. In the entirety of it, he gives him insight as to why this isn't something should be done. At the end of the hadith, places his hand on his chest, makes dua for him, Allah help him with this struggle. Doesn't say the word haram even once. People struggling with the consumption of substance in the generation of the companions. The Prophet walks with them through their struggles. A man comes and says that, Ya Rasulullah, in Ramadan, while I was fasting, I slept with my wife. And at the end of the hadith, he gives the man the charity that he was telling him to give people who are in need. But when our messenger sees people being racist, sees people being hateful, sees people being oppressive and abusive, anger is apparent on his face. The companion is abusing a child, and the prophet's voice echoes behind him. Allah has more dominion over you than you do over this child. He turns and he sees the messenger of God, and anger is apparent on his face. Ya Rasulullah, he is free from this. Good, had you not done so, you would have burned in the fire like a coal. Allah's anger is in disobedience. Don't look down at it. That 1 minute where you try to justify while it's okay that you're sitting with a group of friends, the angels are still writing it down, man. That you are in a place where at the expense of the dignity of your sister, you speak poorly of her when you are gathered with your brothers. The angels are there. And the consequence is not that so-and-so and such is going to do again and again in the hadith when people engage the Prophet, especially in the early parts, and he's saying, just come to this thing of tawheed and believe in an akhirah that is real and doesn't need you to believe it for it to be true. That if you follow what I say, there will be good for you in this world and the next, but if you don't, it's going to be between Allah and you. Allah is going to decide. Don't look down even at the little things. You think this woman in this hadith is thinking, as she is cruel to this kitten or cat, that that's going to be what's going to bring her to Jahannam? Don't have a reductive understanding of religion that believes that postures in and of itself of prayer are going to be what brings you to a place of proximity to the divine. The heart that is there within that body has to be one that has subservience. Literally, we are taught of people on the day of judgment that the call will come to make sajda to Allah, and people will make sajda to Allah other than the ones who were hypocrites, that outwardly they were forming themselves in the formations of prayer, but inwardly their hearts were not in it. May Allah protect us from it. Allah's contentment is hidden in the acts of obedience. Go out, man, and light up the world with your goodness. What are you waiting for? Don't just be Muslim for an hour on a Friday, and then when you leave the room, you go and turn into something else. 1 million of us in this city, if we felt a sense of dignity and honor through our faith and tradition, would there be anybody who would say to me what this woman said to me in the train? Would she say that you are a Muslim, we know what it is that you stand for? We're taught in another hadith where the companions ask of two different women. One who is qualified as somebody who prays in the night, fasts in the day, gives a lot in charity, but her neighbors are harmed by her tongue. What do you say of her, O Messenger of God? La khayra fiha hiya min ahl an-nar, that there is no good in her. She is from the people of the fire. May Allah protect us from it. And then they say there's a woman who she just does the prescribed prayers. She gives a little bit in charity, but nobody is hurt by her tongue. Hiya min ahl al-jannah. She is from the people of paradise. Allah's anger is found in disobedience. Do not look down upon it. Allah's contentment is found in acts of obedience. Do not look down upon it. Every single day, we are in a place where the mujahada we engage in is a struggle for control of ourselves. Different parts of you can bring you to a place where you choose. The woman who is a prostitute that chooses to give water to the thirsty animal, what part of her is making that decision? The heart or someplace else? The woman who is engaged in cruelty against the cat. And if that's what the consequence is of being cruel against a cat, can you imagine what people are going to do when they stand in front of Allah based off of how they treated other human beings? How could anybody fathom that God would be happy with a parent striking their child? How could anybody be in a place where they could believe that Allah would find pleasure in any form of oppression or abuse? And as you see examples around you, the world is not filled with any shortage of exemplars of ugliness. Whose commands are you following? Whose prohibitions are you following? It doesn't matter if they tell you that you cannot leave to pray from your class. They are not the ones who enact prohibitions. Allah is. It is not anything other than the strength of your iman that has you find in a hostile office, an empty room or closet to pray your prostrations. The ajr is in the struggle. But you just give it up altogether. Remember this: Allah's pleasure is hidden in the commandments. So don't look down upon that. And Allah's anger is hidden in the disobedience. So don't look down upon that. The ethics, the character, the values, the consequence of what it is that is not just the doing of rituals and practice for the sake of them, but for them to be transformative of the inner self, necessitates understanding this foundational element that Allah is my Rabb, and I choose every day to not be an abd of anything other than Allah. And the secret is that it's not meant to create struggle, but that's where contentment lies. And there are people who think about this just in the temporary senses of things. But as you prep yourself and ready yourself to provide food on the table for your families, may Allah bless all of us with a rizq that is halal only. As you ready yourself for meetings and presentations and papers and examinations, the preparation can be that I ready for this, but it has to always be qualified within the broader frame of preparation that is for something much bigger in the world beyond this one. And then the third thing that is hidden within something else, that Allah hides His closest of servants, His awliya, amongst His creation. So do not scorn any part of creation. We don't have a community where everybody is from the same race or culture. We don't. Where I'm sitting right now, standing, there are people that clearly come from different places. And you have to think about this in the context of commands that come in the first two parts to this. Shaitan believes in Allah. He says, "Khalaqtani," that you made me from nar. So he's acknowledging that Allah created him. The disbelief that he is qualified to have in the Quran is not rooted in not believing in Allah's existence, but the disbelief that Shaitan has is rooted in his disobedience of Allah. And what is his disobedience of Allah rooted in primarily? He's looking down upon Adam alayhi salam. You made me from this, and you made him from that. I am of fire, he is of earth. That makes me better than him. If in the heart that you have been blessed to have, you believe that you are fundamentally better, that is not always a consciously driven thought, but unconsciously permeates our psyches, and it is manifest based off of how we treat the people around us. Who gets a smile from you when you greet them and you see them? And who is it that has to come from a certain place that you won't even notice that they were there? When you're sitting and you're passing down teachings to people who come from younger generations, you yourself Do you fundamentally believe that you are in a higher standing in any stratified system based off of wealth and possessions and objects? And that others who don't have these things, that they are lesser than you? You don't know if the awliya of Allah are sitting and sleeping in Washington Square Park. You don't know. During the time of the Prophet of God, he comes into the masjid, and a woman who is described in the hadith as being black, who would clean the masjid, she dies. And the Prophet says, why didn't anybody tell me? And he proceeds to go and pray for her at her grave. You don't know who the awliya are. You don't know that that person that you're talking poorly about, that person who you think you are somehow elevated to tell your child they can't marry because they come from a different culture or race, the person who you would find some sense of dignity in saying, I would never invite someone like that into my home. You don't know who the close friends of Allah are. You don't know. And every missed opportunity to be able to just recognize the shared humanity, the shared love, the shared la ilaha illallah. Just think about how you treat people that are other than where you are from. Think about differences in any capacity. There's some of us in this room who, if we hear somebody speak, there are brilliant scholars of Islam throughout New York City. People say, where can I go to learn? What can I do? And you won't take from them because they have an accent of some kind. To that level of discrepancy. But Allah has hidden the closest of his servants amongst creation. That guy driving your Uber, your cab driver, you don't know. When you're trying to decide whether you tip somebody who's got to drive 16 hours a day just to make ends meet, you don't know. And in these three things, Allah has hidden what it is that can set for us a prism and parameter of our engagement of this world. Allah has hidden his contentment in obedience. So do not scorn, do not look down at obedience. Allah has hidden his anger in disobedience. So do not scorn, do not look down at disobedience. And Allah has hidden his awliya, his closest of servants, within his creation. So don't look down, don't scorn Allah's creation. This Mubarak day of Jumu'ah, just think about it. What am I actually an abd of? What is it that I am in obedience of? Whose teachings, whose rules, whose way am I following? And is it worth their pleasure at the expense of Allah's anger? Is it worth a few laughs? Is it worth a few moments of just temporary satisfaction at the expense of potential accountability? Why did you treat people the way you treated them? Why? Why did you think that was okay? Why didn't you do the right that you had the ability to do? What else were you chasing after that distracted you? Why did you make fun of the way that that person smelled who hasn't showered because they live in that setting? The person who isn't aware of kind of cultural norms where you're from and is in a place where they're just trying their best. Why didn't you help them instead of just mocking them? Why don't you get angry at the things the Prophet got angry by? Why are you waiting to share your light with a world that is getting so dark? These three things can create for us a guiding framework. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll be from amongst them who act upon them. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. A key ingredient to getting to this place where we can be aware of what has the potential of gaining contentment from the divine. May Allah make us those that He is pleased with. Or being in a place where we are consciously aware that the potential transgression that I'm about to engage in could incur from me accountability from God in the form of anger. May Allah protect us from that. Or an understanding of how it is that I fundamentally treat people is rooted in my vision of others, how I see them, not telling me something about who they are, but telling me something about me, myself. You got to take some time to learn what this religion actually is, what it offers in terms of teachings, what it gives to us in terms of guidance, not in a place where it stops at a certain age after going to weekend schools that were just about memorizations of dates and names and places. But actual ideals, actual values, actual principles that you exert when you are choosing your choices in this world. Everything is an abd in our understanding. It doesn't just mean servant. You are an abd because you rely on something to exist. Allah uniquely is Rabb because He is Ghani. He is free of need. Allah does not rely on anything to exist. You could right now consume, inhale from a person sitting rows away from you. An organism that is so small, you couldn't even see it if you tried as hard as you wanted, and your entire body would fall apart. That's how fragile we are. You necessarily need something to exist. That's what an abd is. If you get to a place where you open your heart to the idea that all I fundamentally really need to be is an abd of Allah because everything else is going to have inadequacy. Is it hard? Yeah, it can be hard. But that's why you lean on each other. Kindness cannot be seen as a weakness. It is a strength in our tradition. You think bigger than yourself and the precedent that's set for you. It's not just about you going to an exam or a class and skipping the Jumu'ah prayer and then younger kids doing the same. Think about them when you're deciding that. It's not just about being in a place where, well, this is what my parents taught me. You want to have your children exceed you, not be at a place where they are equal or even lesser. The role of the teacher is one of elation when the student surpasses the teacher, not one where they can say they still have a lot more to learn. Inevitably, you're doing something because somebody told you to do it that way. And you're not doing certain things because somebody told you that that's the way it shouldn't be done. Is it your heart that is defining that? Is it your lower self, the ego? Are you trying your best, even if there's struggle, to do what it is that Allah has asked you to do? Are you giving in to a world that relishes Muslims who don't follow Islam because we have one of the few traditions that are left that call people into account for their lack of ethics, morals, and consciousness? And if 800 of us went out on this day of Jumu'ah and just put 800 pieces of light into the world, it wouldn't be dark, at least for some people. What am I an abd of? What did I worship this week? Who did I submit myself to? May Allah make us from the closest and most righteous of His servants always. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad fil awwalin wa fil akhirin. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallama ya arhamar rahimin. Allahumma innaka afuwan kareemun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. Ya muqallibal qulub thabbit qulubana ala dinik. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah, and beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. We ask that you shower your infinite mercy upon this gathering, granting each and every one who is present herein and our loved ones only the best in this world and the best in the next. We ask, Ya Allah, that if all of us are meant to be together only at this time, at this place, whether we are young or old, male or female, regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our social class, our country of origin, our cultural heritage, whether we are Muslim or come from a different walk of life, Ya Rabbi, if our individual hearts are meant to be in the presence of all other hearts that are gathered here only at this time, at this place, then gather us all together again in the best of places in the world beyond this one. Increase us, Ya Allah, in all that is good. Increase us in courage, compassion, and confidence. Protect us from any affliction, anxiety, or anguish. Remove from our hearts any feelings of bitterness, jealousy, animosity, or envy towards any of your creation. Grant us hearts that are filled with understanding and hope. Hearts that are drawn towards things of real beauty. Hearts that find themselves deep in your remembrance. For indeed in your remembrance do hearts find rest. Ya Allah, make us those whose hearts find rest. Ya Allah, make us from amongst those who find pleasure in pursuing those things that are pleasing to you. Those who find contentment in that which brings you contentment, Ya Rabbi. Forgive us when we slip. Forgive us when we fall. Forgive us for any of our mistakes, conscious or unconsciously. Make us from amongst those, Ya Allah, who treat all of your creation with a dignity, sense of honor, and respect that you would have us to. And help us to understand that our own sense of dignity is not rooted in obeying anyone other than you, that there is no beauty in disobedience. Make us from the most beautiful of your creation. Help us to find our Islam is something that we would never want to let go of, no matter what is offered to us. Make us those whose presence always brings relief, benefit, and ease to those who are around us. Let us never be those who look down at others, nor let us be those who adopt the ways of those who look down at others. But help us to remember always who our teacher is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to treat others in the ways that we treat them based off of who it is that we want to be and not who it is that they simply are. Watch over this community always and send to us those who will look after it and care for it as best as they can. Bless the young people in this space, our students, Ya Rab. Give them tawfiq in all of their endeavors and studies. And from amongst them, let rise those that we need to continue to lead our broader community in the best of ways, and make us as elders good role models and exemplars to them. And all of us who are gathered here, keep our hearts close to each other, connected always on the La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah that we have been blessed to share. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وأقم الصلاة.